And Mr. Chair, you are live.
Okay. The Board of Port Wardens will come to order on Tuesday, January the 25th. We have with us tonight myself, Willie Sampson, the Vice Chair, Scott Anderson, and Robert Shapiro. John Butler will not be with us, so we have a full house. And additionally, Kimberly Consoli, our recording secretary, Carrie Berger, Assistant City Attorney, and Kevin Scott, who is off camera. But all of those people help keep us straight. Gentlemen, you have before you the agenda. Can I have a motion that we approve the agenda?
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. It's unanimous. We have the minutes from November the 23rd. It seems like only yesterday. I've reviewed them and I have no concerns about them. Does anyone have any problems? If not, can I have a motion? We approve them.
Make a motion to approve.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Moved. Okay. By unanimous consent, those minutes are approved. We have three findings of fact, and I'll just take them one at a time so there's no confusion. The first is John Tillman, application 024. Any concerns, debate? If not, kind of a motion that we approve that. It's been moved by Mr. Shapiro, seconded by Mr. Sampson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adopted unanimously. The second one is 709 Arundel Place. Again, I saw no concern with those findings at all. So can I have a motion that maybe I'll shorten this up. I move that we approve these findings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The last one is 16 Chesapeake Avenue. Again, I saw no problem, so I move that we approve those findings. I have a second, and Mr. Shapiro, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. So the findings are approved. Tonight we have one order of old business, and then we've got three new business. So I will take up the old business. And Julian, I don't know if anyone's in the waiting room. The record is closed except for two submissions that we asked for and put a deadline on it. And one submission is by the applicant, and the other one is by the 310 3rd Street on Baker Donaldson. And so I will place both of those submissions into the record. Gentlemen, it's time for decision and deliberation now on this application. Do we have any comments or statements before we I'm prepared to make a couple of comments if no one else is. Let me say, first of all, that this is a very difficult application, and I and the board appreciate very much the testimony that we've received. I thought very good, clear, professional, and detailed. I'm struck by basically three trends that are happening that this application highlights. First, that the boats in our waters are becoming longer and beamier, and the trend is anticipated to continue, including more multi-hulls, although as pointed out, they are a little more maneuverable. Second is there are more users of individual watercraft, such as stand-up paddleboards, kayaks, dinghies, canoes, etc., that are in Annapolis waters, leading to more congestion, but more access to the public. Which leads to the last one, which is the increasing demand for water access from public entry points, such as the street endings. And now that trend has been codified into a new law. It strikes me that this particular waterway is in the intersection of all three of these trends, and leads me to the conclusion that to further occlude the width of the fairway would, according to the new legislation, impede navigable access by the public as outlined in Title 16.020. While there are narrower fairways, this particular one, as several others, in a point of public access, but with the trend for wider boats, more crowded, more congestion, more people using water, I think that we ought to be concerned about a race to the bottom in terms of the width of our fairways, as opposed to trying to preserve or improve on what we have. Similarly, while I know the board, as I do, supports the economics and development of the maritime industry to the extent possible, we have to weigh seriously anytime public waters are taken away, and because once relinquished, it's hard to get them back. This is especially true if the result of the proposed development could be achieved without restricting the fairway. And this is difficult because the law doesn't specify navigation, restricting navigation by whom, whether it's professionals, amateurs, and I can only conclude it has to be all of them, nor does it specify the conditions, whether it's good weather, bad weather, storm, clear, what have you, nor the type of watercraft, large boats, small boats. But having said all that, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I don't want to cut off any further discussion. So do any of my fellow port wardens have any comments? Then I'll make my motion and then we can debate it. Based on these, this that I've outlined, I would move that we deny this application. Any comments? Any seconds? Any motions?
I'd like to hear more discussion before I second it. I'm close to seconding it, but I'd like to hear more discussion.
Well, please do. I mean, I tried to tee this up as a concern about the impeding public access, and based on the testimony before us. But they're obviously, because of the detail of the testimony, there obviously is room for discussion and ideas. Robert, do you have? Would you like to say anything in regard to the discussion?
No, I mean, there's I feel like there's enough a number of Section 15 that are at play here, but I mean, there hasn't really been anything new from the yard since I guess it was later 21, post the last meeting. There was something new from 310, 310's rep. I guess, I'd like to give the two of them a chance again to sort of explain some parts of it that maybe are different than the discussion we had, if there is anything different.
The yard did make a submission at the same date, December the 7th, because the record has been closed except for these two submissions, which are now in the record. Are you proposing that we reopen the record for discussion by the party?
No, I'm seeing one document. Maybe it got resaved. Actually, I'm sorry. You're right. It did. In my system, it's showing a 2022 date, but that was my own. I must have moved the location. So I I guess we have covered most bases, so. Sorry.
Do you have any views on what I discussed in terms of the?
Honestly, I think I think you've got it. You described it incredibly well. It is, some of those elements are hard to define. Poor navigation or the capability to deal with tight situations might be based on different experience levels, but unfortunately, I think we have to go to a common average of boating capability. I do think we are looking at boats. I wish John were part of this discussion as far as some of the lines, as far as the way they're drawn. But I do feel like we shouldn't be squeezing off any space, especially if it has access to public access.
So Willie or Scott, do you have any thoughts or this regard?
No, I don't have any disregards on that one, Gene.
Scott, your sound is off.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear both of you now.
All right.
I heard you, Willie. You said you have no thoughts now. Do you?
No, I don't have any thoughts on it now, Gene.
Okay. Scott, were you?
Is there anything that says it doesn't conform to water access by a city? You hear me? So, I mean,
I'm not sure I understood the question.
it's public water access, correct? Is
Yes.
what right. So what defines that? And does it conform?
It's whether navigability is impeded.
Right. But it doesn't guarantee anybody a specific width, but it's got to be safe, right?
That's right. It's a judgment. It's got to be safe. Also, I would think that, and these are difficult concepts, but I think similarly to further occlude the waterway probably would add to the potential of congestion. Now I'll make it clear that if my motion, if we agree that the decision has no determination as far as the lateral lines, nor, and I would want to specifically say, does it condone any illegal intrusion into the fairway by tied up boats? But that's a matter of enforcement, not a matter, we had some testimony before us of that, but that's a matter of enforcement, which is beyond our purview. I see the harbor master's on now. Okay, if I don't have a second of my motion, it's going to fail for want of a second. So
I'll second it, Gene.
okay. Motion's been made that we deny this application, and it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Scott, Willie. Okay. The application is denied 4-0. And I want to thank all parties. And it was tough, but the law has changed underneath us, and trends have changed. Okay, we'll now move to new business. We have 3 applications. The first one is the Javen family, and Julian, we might want to see if anyone's in the waiting room. Also, want to acknowledge that Alderman Arnett has joined us. And Ross, I don't know how long you've been on, but we have disposed of the old application.
I got on just as you made your motion, but I will be on for the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. The Jabin family estate, I see two Jabins. Once they're admitted, there's Rod. And Rod, are you going to present the application? Your sound is off. Rod, your sound is off.
I got it now, but
Okay.
yes, I am going to present.
Okay. Would you please do so?
Okay, as many of you are aware, the Jabin Yacht Yard on Edgewood Road in Back Creek. On the west side there, we have quite a few piers there that are in place that has a natural shoreline. And due to what we view as increasing water levels over the years and increased traffic in the creek, that natural shoreline has eroded to create a steep slope condition that needs to be controlled. We have trees and vegetation that are growing into the creek and growing sideways, which is an indication of the steepness of the slopes. So what we have in front of us tonight is an application to construct 1,200 linear feet of timber bulkhead to support that shoreline and hold that slope together, so it stops the erosion into the creek. And because of the access required to get to the bulkhead and do that construction, at the same time, we're going to replace the piers that are on that west wall as well. The piers were built on or around 1981 and have reached the end of their useful life, really. So we're going to replace those piers with new floating docks that will be wider. There is, as you suggested in the last, your comments in the last hearing, boats are getting wider and wider and wider. And so our slips are going to get wider, and we'll have a net reduction of almost 30 slips on that backside to accommodate the more modern boats that we're seeing now. And that's it, really. It's creation of the bulkhead to support the steep slopes and the removal and replacement of the existing piers in the same location, not asking for any harbor line amendments or adjustments. We're going to go back in with some minor changes to the pier configuration, but all within the harbor line constraints to take advantage of the boats getting wider and reconfigured. It is a more modern boat.
There are a couple of questions that I know this, you want to construct a bulkhead. The trend is to not do bulkhead, but to do living shorelines, et cetera. Were alternatives considered to bulkhead?
Yeah, Gene, we spent, well, this is our third year working on this project with my engineer, Scott Milkey, and we've explored all other avenues to protect that slope, including the living shorelines. And none seem to be a viable long-term solution that would be successful. I'll turn it over to Scott to talk in more detail about why a living shoreline was not appropriate in this setting. And it has to do with water depths and how fast the water gets deep there to the shoreline. But I'll turn it over to Scott for a more articulate discussion on why the living shorelines and the other options were not suitable.
Mr. Godley, this is Scott Milkey from Waterfront Engineering, as you well know. We actually had MDE out initially before we even submitted and designed the project, and went through walk the shoreline. And once we did that, we all realized that trying to have a living shoreline type structure was not feasible at the site due to the quick water depth near the shoreline. Additionally, it's a very steep slope right behind the shoreline. It goes up, and several trees have fallen over. And the second option would have been to put a stone revetment in lieu of a bulkhead. The bulkhead would be the last choice of the position of this. So when we figured out stone revetment, we would have had to have taken so many trees down along that bank and regrade the entire bank that it felt, MDE and myself both felt that a bulkhead would be the least impact to the environment because of the way we construct them nowadays. We can literally vibrate all the poles in and all the sheeting, and then we can not have to drive any tieback piles. We're able to use these platypus anchors now that we can shoot right back into the hill and just backfill over without having to take any trees or grade or anything. So it was the best option. We were able to actually keep some of the grasses growing along the shoreline. We could put the bulkhead behind that, leaving the grasses alone. So that's how this thing has evolved.
Thank you. Those should be mandatory questions of, whether you're going through alternatives. Ron, I have one more question. I'll turn it over to my fellow port wardens. Floating piers now seem to be the trend in pier replacement. And we have to be sure the materials are substantial, et cetera, and lasting according to the code. What are the pontoons actually made of? I couldn't tell from the application.
Right. So the interior of the pontoons are made of a closed cell styrofoam, so they can't absorb any water. Water can penetrate the polyethylene shell. And when I say polyethylene shell, think of a truck bed liner. Everybody's familiar with a truck bed liner, those plastic liners that drop in the back of a pickup truck. It's very similar to that material, but vacuum bagged and compressed inside of that sealed container is a closed cell foam that provides the buoyancy. The manufacturers offer a 20-year warranty on the floating drums. And so that's the most important feature of a floating dock is the quality of the float drums. And so with any replacement of the piers or anything else, you can imagine how much research is done and how far we drill down to make sure that we have a viable product, because floating piers are kind of new to us in some respects. And we have to make sure that we're going to get a long life. You heard me say earlier that these existing piers were put in 1981. Well, I don't think you can ask much more than a 40 or 45-year life. And if we can get anywhere close to that with a floating dock, that's what we have to do. And the real reason for floating dock is not only do our customers really resonate with the idea of a floating dock because it's so user-friendly, but it's also a way to hedge against rising sea level, because I can't tell you how frequent it is now that we get these storm surges and tide rises that come over the fixed pier. And by having floating docks, it really does solve a multitude of issues, one of which is just the electrical issue alone. When the tides are forecasted to flood like it did in late October, or was it November, this last one that came up to, almost a +5, that went over the piers. But everybody's got to remember, when it comes over the piers, all the power pedestals, all the breakers, all that stuff gets saturated with water and have to be replaced. And so by creating a floating pier, it keeps all that above the rising water and keeps that intact and creates a much safer situation. I can't tell you how many times that Roddy and myself have been down in the marina at 2 o'clock in the morning, turning the power off because the tide is encroaching on top of the deck. So not only is it user friendly for the customers, but we think it's a safety related issue as well.
So the utility raceway underneath rises and falls and doesn't flood.
Yeah.
Okay, I promise to yield away. So Port Wardens, Willie, Robert, Scott, any questions?
I have a question for you.
No.
Scott, you got it. We can barely hear you talking to the microphone.
Can you see me now? Can you hear me
Yep.
now?
Yeah.
Hey, Rod. So you're putting in bigger slips. It's the same configuration. How's that going to affect the amount of piles that are in the water?
Well, actually, with floating piers, there's a tremendous reduction in pilings. I'll give you an example. Like there's 3 piers in 3 sections that go along that west wall there. And on a typical fixed pier scenario, there's over 100 pilings supporting that. On a floating pier, it probably will be reduced to about 35. And so there's a whole lot less timber in the ground, so to speak, because of the way the piers are structured and built. It doesn't require piling every 10 feet to support a pier deck. It's all, the structure is provided by the float drum.
Right. Yeah. And they don't doesn't have to have a standpipe system, does it? Because it's a floating dock.
No, I wish that were the case. But no, the fire code still applies to our operation in the floating docks. They don't draw a distinction between floating and fixed. So they have utility options that include spaces for a fire dry pipe system. And all of our existing floating piers that we have at the marina, we have a couple have that fire dry pipe in them as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And Kevin, I didn't see anyone that wanted to give oral testimony. So
That's correct. There's no public comments, nothing submitted in writing.
okay. If there's no further discussion, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Gene,
Oh,
Gene, before you do that, have you accepted the staff report into the public or into the record?
I have not, and since it's an excellent staff report, that's a good idea. I would like for to enter both the staff report and the application into the record. Thank you, Carrie, for prompting me. And so we've had a motion. I think we had a motion and a second that we approve this application. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Rod, you are approved, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Next application is from the city of Annapolis. So who's going to present this?
Mr. Chairman, it's Scott Milkey again. I'll be presenting tonight.
Okay, please do so.
The city is proposing to replace the N Street bulkhead at Cheston Avenue. In addition to replacing the bulkhead with a newer bulkhead, approximately 1 to 2 feet higher than the existing bulkhead to take care of the rise in sea level situation that's been washing out behind the existing bulkhead. We've also proposing to put a kayak launch platform, floating platform, as well as a 10 by 25 floating dinghy dock to allow public access. And that will be accessed by a 4 foot by 30 foot aluminum gangway. And if you look at sheet 3 of 14, you can kind of see the best, that's the best view. And then there's a pier dimension sheet, which is sheet 5 of 14, which gives the actual dimensions of the structures themselves.
Right. Self-explanatory to me, so I have no further questions. Any of the fellow port wardens have any? If not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion. Approve.
Willie moves that we approve this. I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
The next application is James and Kathleen Mott, 602 Burnside. May I say it, for the last application, we did accept the staff report and the application into the record after the fact. So On the mod application, we'll accept the application and the staff report into the record. Mr. Larian, are you presenting this?
I am.
Please
I'm,
proceed.
Good evening, Port Wardens and Chairman. I'm Dan Larian, representing James and Kathleen Mott at 602 Burnside Street. The purpose of this application is to remove the existing 4 by 18.5 foot pier, construct a 6 by 30 foot pier, and install 3 mooring piles. We posted public notice signs on the January 12th. We sent out the notification to the adjacent property owners on the 13th. And I realize there's a series of comments from the public, so I'm prepared to answer any of those questions if you have any.
Okay, let me say that all of those comments from the public, and I think they're basically from 4 parties, and Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, all of those we placed in the record. And Kevin, to my knowledge, none of these asked for public testimony in filling out the blanks.
That's correct. There were, I think there were 5. 2 of them, I think, were husband and wife, but they came from 5 people, and nobody asked to testify live at this hearing.
Okay, those will be placed in the record. And Dan, I would like you to comment because the objections came in late. So I was one, do you have the no objection letter from the neighbor that you were seeking?
No, sir. I asked twice, once by certified mail and once by mail, and never received a return response. So we modified the drawing and resubmitted back to Kevin to nip the corner off the pier to fit the pier within the setback. So we're not asking to build within the setback at this time.
Okay. We have that drawing, but we that. Would you also address the public access, again, an issue that came late, and in all of the some of that correspondence are allegations that deals were made to move property lines, and but I didn't see any other allegation in the evidence. But my major question is, now that we see where the public access is, does that change your drawing of the lateral lines?
Well, I'm a little blindsided by the public access. The owner that bought the property, it didn't come up in the title search as far as being attached to his deed. So he was unaware of it until yesterday, and so was I. And I haven't been able to research whether that's a recorded legal document. Maybe I can't tell if it's something that somebody drew up, but I superimposed it to show you where it is. But the question is, I would like to delete that first mooring pile up close to the bulkhead so we can open that access up. If there is a public access, we would not impede on it. And that storm drain easement comes down and stops at mean high water at the bulkhead. There is no public access in state waters that I've ever run up on where the state has told us about anything like that. So this is new to me. Again, at 717 Chester, the adjacent property, it didn't come up a year ago when that property was under review and there was a permit issued, and the existing pier and proposed pier was put back where it was, and it's in front of that quote unquote public access. But there still will be a alleyway to get up to there by boat, by kayak, whatever needs to be. And if you look on the photographs of the existing pier and the existing boat lift that's there is looks like a 16-foot center console boat that's up on a lift that's been there for years, and it's never come up to be an issue. But again, I'm fairly negotiable. I know this guy bought this property thinking that his 17 or 22-foot boat would tie up to the pier, but it would be safely tied up better if it was longer and put him out in deeper water. So I will leave that up to you to advise me on what's the best way to proceed.
I'd like Kevin, do you have any comment on this, or were you aware of this issue till late?
Well, the existence of the easement wouldn't affect the way the lateral lines are drawn. So, because it's not a separate parcel, so the lateral lines will still be drawn off of the property corner. What's important to note is this application doesn't impede or interfere with any access. There's still, the easement still gets to the water, and then there's still a 10-foot fairway with the lateral line setback on either side to get through there. Want to kayak or paddleboard or what have you.
So the only issue would be that one piling and,
Yeah, if Dan's saying he wants to eliminate that one pylon, that even makes it a better situation.
Yeah, we will delete that piling up at the bulkhead, Gene. So the closest pile to the access, let me scale that distance.
okay, let me let's pause there and see any other comments or questions? Robert, Willie, Scott?
I don't have any.
So Dan, the applicant would not have a problem if we were to approve this application with the tip of the pier cut off because of the not receiving no objection letter and just voluntarily remove the inward piling.
Yes, sir. We discussed that last night.
Do we have a motion? I'm prepared to, I'll make a motion that we approve this with those two modifications. That it adhere to the new drawing with the tip of the pier cut off and 2 rather than 3 pilings.
Second.
I heard a second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. You are approved.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there anything else to come before the board or Kevin or Terry, any other comments? If not, the
Next hearing is February 22nd.
okay, February 22nd, we will be there. Alderman Arnett, thank you for joining us, and the Port Wardens are hereby adjourned.
All right. All right, Gene, you have a good one.